Hello, and welcome to the Be Your Own Day Hero podcast. I'm your host, Pauline McKinney. I'm so happy you're here. If you are just tuning in, we are in season 2 of this podcast series. Season 2 is all about knowing yourself. My whole goal this season is to really empower you to have your best life, to be the biggest version of you. This is about me sharing my journey, going from someone who didn't trust herself to someone who really trusts and respects and believes in herself, and just how empowering it's been. Every episode, I'm going to be bringing you a new lens, a new modality, a new system that I've used and experimented with in my own life. And I'll talk to you about how it's changed my life and empowered me. I'm not an expert in any of these modalities, but I have studied them. I've deepened into them and I have experimented with them and lived the experience of using them, which I think is its own value. And so I invite you to take these systems and modalities and practice living them too, because I think that's where the real value is. You can study forever, but if you're not using it and applying it, then what's the point, right? The title of today's show is Who's Really Running the Show? I will reveal the modality a little bit later in the episode because I want to keep you surprised and guessing. Have you ever been in a situation where you were stressed out or unsure or really activated or angry, and some part of you just seemed to take over without you even really realizing or knowing? Just some part of you just started to say things or do things that aren't really you. That's what this episode is all about, because I think that when we are in scenarios where we feel out of our depth or stressed out or unsure, there are parts of us that take over and there are parts of us that run the show, whether we realize it or not. And this episode is all about understanding and working with those parts of ourselves. I was in a funky place in my life when I started working with this modality. I had quit my job, I'd left the corporate world, and I had started my own business. And my business was not doing great. It just started and I was really flailing. I felt really lost. I would report into the kitchen every day at 9 a.m. and wait for someone to tell me what was happening or what was going to be going on that day. If you want to hear more about this entire experience, you can go and listen to season 1, because that's really when I entered this hero's journey, because it was a really hard experience for me to leave a world I knew to go into another world where I felt totally lost. And so I was flailing emotionally. I felt really unsure about myself. To be completely frank, I felt like a loser. I felt like a total moron. And what was even more embarrassing and shameful for me was that I had gone to business school. I had spent 20 years in the corporate world, helping businesses, being a consultant, knowing how to learn and grow and help other businesses. And I completely expected that when I left the corporate world and my job, I would so easily be able to transition into doing my own thing. And when that didn't happen, I felt like a complete loser. I felt like a total failure and I thought I sucked. I felt really lost at sea without any sort of direction. I didn't even want to look at my numbers. I didn't want it to be reflected back to me just how poorly I was doing. I didn't have stable income coming in. I wasn't really sure how to get it. I was really good at all of the setting up part of my business and starting it, but figuring out what I'm selling, who I'm going to sell to, and talking about it, I just wanted to crawl under a rock. I felt so uncomfortable. I thought what would happen was that I would be great. I would just naturally coast through it. It would be easy. I just assumed that I would immediately leave and start a business and all of my income from my job would just transfer over. And when it didn't happen, I was really hard on myself and I was really down on myself. And some of the thoughts I thought were like, oh my God, you're such a freaking loser. You should just pack up now. You should not be doing this. You're not cut out for this. I would think about what an imposter I was, that maybe this wasn't right for me and I should just tuck my tail between my legs and get a job. I had barely made any money and I felt just like maybe if I took more classes or if I worked with another expert, that they would show me the magic key to unlock all of this for me, that they would somehow know what to do because they had all found success and I hadn't. And I just felt really broken, like it was me. And if that wasn't bad enough, I had these other places in my life that were starting to become more and more tense. Two other places to be exact. I had this area of friendship where, as I'm starting to emerge as a budding business owner, I wanted to talk more about my business because my business was like my new baby. And like any brand new parent to a baby, I was obsessed. I wanted to talk about my business to everybody, all my friends. I started noticing that some of my friends didn't want to hear it. Some of my friends didn't want to talk about it. And it would get visibly uncomfortable or tense when I would try to talk about the new parts of my life that were coming out. And that was weird. I just felt somehow not only was I sucking in my business life and not doing well, but also I was sticking out like a sore thumb in my social groups too. I was just like, oh my God, I'm just sucking. And on top of that, the third place where everything was just being weird in my life was at home. I was so used to having a harmonious home life with such wonderful kids and such a great dynamic. And I was offering to do things for them because I had more time. So I would offer to pick stuff up for them or go do something for them. I would offer to buy them things or take them places. And I just assumed that when I did these things that they would also reciprocate or appreciate me. And sometimes I would feel left hanging like, well, you didn't even say thank you or you didn't even try to like do this other thing when I asked you to. You gave me so much attitude. Two teenagers. I got really resentful about the whole thing. I had this time on my hand. I thought, well, if there's one place I'm really good at in my life, it's being a mom. I'm so good at that. And even that was sucking. My teenagers were kind of like mad at me because I would get resentful and snappy, and they would get mad because it's like, I didn't ask you to do that for me. You volunteered and now you're mad at me. And it would be that kind of weird dynamic that played out. And it it was just a really weird time in my life. My business was basically saying, you suck. My friend groups were saying, you don't belong here. And my family was saying, like, give me space. And so that was just a really uncomfortable time to be. And I felt like the only common thread between these things was me. I felt like I was just messed up. Like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? I kept asking myself, what is wrong with me that I keep breaking these parts of my life that have worked? And look, I make these changes and then suddenly everything's falling apart. Obviously, I broke my life. And I felt terrible. I felt like a total loser in many areas of my life at the same time. That sucked. And I think the thing that I hadn't really put together, but I see it so clearly in hindsight, was that this was not three disconnected dots. It was really the same pattern wearing different outfits in my life. And now I'm going to talk about what this modality is and how I came to start to work with it. The modality is archetypes, working with archetypes. And I'm going to briefly introduce it. Archetypes are not just your high school assignment where you read a story and you determine who fits what archetype, but they really are these very ancient, universal energy patterns. And it's said that we have all of them within us, but I believe that we really have very active ones and very dormant ones. And so to say you have all of them, yes, but like, you have very active ones inside of you. If I were to ask you, well, what characters would you really identify with in your life? Those are like tip offs to what archetypes are alive in you. And I found a lot of this work through Carolyn Mace. And she talked about how archetypes were a very useful tool to help you create space in your life and take your life less personally. And that really perked me up because I had a lot of shit going on in my life at the time. And I listened to several of her workshops about this, and I got to understand that it's really about, she explains it through this metaphor of being in a building. On the ground floor, it's you and your life, and you feel very immersed in the experience you're having. You're taking it very personally because it's your life. But when you can take the elevator up to the penthouse, you really learn to look at your life through an archetypal lens. Like, well, if my life was characters and I'm a character and the other people are characters and there's a story being played out, a myth, then who are the characters and what's the story? And when you can take it up to that level, then you can start to take what's going on in your life less personally. So, this fascinated me when I started to connect the dots and understand the patterns that were actually playing out in my life. The power of archetypes was really this idea of being able to give myself some space between what was happening in my life and what the archetypes would say was happening in my life. What is the mythical story? If I knew that this is just something that plays out, then I don't have to take it so personally because I'm just a character living a story. And maybe I could make a better choice in that story. It also helped me realize that there are bigger forces at play than just me being insane, which, like, I really was hoping it would be something other than it's you. You are the problem. You are broken. Who wants that story in their life? Okay, let's start with my work. This is fascinating because on the ground floor, I was believing that I suck. Oh my God, I have all of this experience. I have all this expertise. And yet, when I go to do it myself, I'm a moron. When I started to look at what was happening through the lens of archetypes, I started to realize that because I felt really out of my depth and really afraid and unsure, I have a very active orphan that I hadn't realized had taken over. And so this orphan was basically running the show when it came to my business. It blew my mind when I realized that when I would try to take steps to really put myself out there and be seen, like market myself or sell my work, I would get this urge, this overwhelming, don't do that. That's not safe. And it was my orphan. She is this part of me that feels really afraid. She just wants to be safe. She wants to keep me safe because she's afraid that if I make mistakes, I will be kicked out of the tribe and I will die. I mean, that's almost like our helpless wounded child or our victim. She's obviously been with me since I was really young, and she's the part of me that just wants to be safe. So when I quit my job and I decided to do this, she was like, oh my God, what are we doing? Maybe it's not too late to go get your job back. So every time I was trying to put myself out there, this part of me was like, that's not safe. Don't do that. Maybe you can wait till tomorrow. Let's just give it one more day. It's not too late. Go try and get your job back. Maybe they'll take you back. You'll probably have to take a pay cut. She just didn't want this emerging, scary business, this founder part of me that really wants to see what I'm made of in the world, trying to like bloom out and grow. And she's like, no, 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 that's not safe. Don't do that. And that blew, that just changed everything for me because suddenly it wasn't, I'm a total moron. It was, oh, there's a very active and alive person running the show right now in my business, and she does not feel safe. She is terrified. That's a very different response and path forward than, oh no, the problem is you. So that was the very first realization I had, and it was so powerful. I realized that my job wasn't to try to lean in harder to taking action or putting myself out there. My job was first to make things feel safe for her, to help her know that we are safe. We are okay. And once I started to work with that, then it started to feel safer to put myself out there, to talk about my work, to market myself. And that changed so many things in my business. I was able to start making consistent income because I didn't feel threat level, danger zone, red, threat level 10 every time I tried to do something. That shifted so many things in my business once I was able to understand that my orphan archetype was running the show and the new archetype needed to help take the wheel. Additionally, on top of that, another huge breakthrough I had with this work was that there was like this professional corporate part of me that also was in charge and running the show. And she is the 20-year veteran, the boss, the polished, amazing professional who brought me so much prosperity. And she wanted everything to be perfect. When I quit my job to start this business, she had expectations that all of the success that she had built would translate. And when it didn't, it felt so painful. And I made a realization that I had this baby business and I was expecting it to literally hold the weight of a 20-year career. And that was so unfair to my baby business to do that. And so I was able to sort of take a step back and stop thrashing myself for not being an instant success and to start to shift my perspective that I am allowed to have a baby business and I'm allowed to have to tend to a baby and grow it from the start, that it has different needs and it can't hold up my entire career on day one. And that's insane to expect that. And once I was able to make that connection, I was able to give myself a lot more grace and stop pooping on myself all the time. All right. And then the second big place that I had this realization with archetypes was around my friendships. I had a realization that I have also a very active, ugly duckling side of me. I have this part of me that feels like an outsider, that wants to belong, but feels like I don't belong, that I don't belong anywhere I go. I had friend groups where the new emerging parts of me just weren't welcome. And it made me feel pressure to stop having that part of me exist when I was around them. So I would have to like compartmentalize myself and I would be old Pauline that they knew versus new Pauline that was starting to emerge, that was starting to come out. And it was really uncomfortable because I felt like I had to twist myself into the former version of me. It's almost like I had to shrink myself down to be this person that they were all comfortable with. And then I could be myself around other people that I was meeting, like other business owners and other founders and entrepreneurs. I would get like really expanded and excited around them because this new version of me, this founder version of me that's emerging was able to like be herself. When I started to do the archetype work, I realized that this ugly duckling was actually emerging as a swan. This part of me of like, I've been through this huge healing journey. I'm starting to change my relationship to myself, to my past. I'm changing my relationship to what I think is possible for me in the future. And some friendships didn't want that part of me. They wanted the old me that saw the past in a different way, that saw myself as a different person. What was huge was Carolyn Mace, in one of the workshops she had, she talked about how there's always a myth between two people in a relationship, whether that's a relationship or a friendship. When the myth dies, usually so does the relationship because there's nothing between them anymore. And I think that I had built some friendships on other with other ugly ducklings who also felt the need to belong, who also felt like outcasts. We bonded as like outcasts or like as the different people in our families, the black sheep. And when we bonded that way, then it made us feel stronger to be together. And we went through our lives together with those identities. And then, when this whole I love myself, I'm empowered, I accept my past, I'm no longer pissed at my whole family or whatever, as these patterns started to break and as I started to shift how I felt about him, then the myth started to die. The commonality that we had together started to change. And that was really hard for me because I think what I had to realize was just because a myth dies doesn't mean anyone's bad. It just means that my journey's taking a left turn and maybe they want to stay going straight. And no one has to be bad for that. It just means that, hey, I'm over here. And if you ever come over here too, I'll meet you there. And I love you no matter what. But I can't continue to make myself small for you. And nothing dramatic had to happen. I knew on my side that this is what was happening and I accepted it. And it gave me a lot more acceptance. And I felt a lot less broken after that. And it really freed me up to be open to meeting new people. And I'm meeting so many great people with other journeys, with other perspectives, with other ideas who are also swans, who are also emerging, who are also in this place of immense growth. And that's really exciting. When you allow the tension between who you were and who you're becoming to come up and you work with that, then you open up to new possibilities. And that in itself is exciting. And the third place was at home. This one was fascinating because it involves my family and my kids. Obviously, I have a very active mother archetype too. She's been a part of me for almost as long as my corporate part of me has been a part of me. She's been there through thick and thin, and she's helped me get to where I am today and be a wonderful mother and a caregiver. And she was over functioning. She almost was like running the household like the kids were four because I needed something to cling on to where I felt confident, where I could be validated. And so I was letting her really mom hard, and I was so over momming. And it's just not what my family needs right now is over momming. Nobody wants to be over mommed when you're like driving age. This one was probably the hardest for me to come to grips with, is that what my life is calling for isn't more mom. It's more deepening into myself. There is this very active, she's almost like a teenage rebel part of me that is like tapping mom on the shoulder, like, excuse me, lady, it's time for you to move. You need to move over. Your kids are cool. They don't need you so much. So maybe you let me sort of run the show and start to explore and get to know myself again. Like, let me be me. And the thing with all of three of these parts of myself is that the tension was really that the version of me that I want to be requires these new identities that are coming into be, but it also is at the cost of these other parts of me that have always kept me safe and that have been with me for a very long time. And that's the hard part. That's the tension where you have to grieve and accept that there are parts of your life that have to change in order for new parts to come in and to keep growing. My orphan kept me safe. My corporate part of me helped me prosper. My ugly duckling helped me figure out how to belong. My mom grew a beautiful household. And these are parts of me that I love so much. And it's hard when you think about letting go of those parts of you. How do you let go of an identity where you feel so successful and happy and prosperous? Or an identity where you get to be a mom, you get to be that beautiful caregiver, and to acknowledge that, like, that's ending, that the container with my kids is about to change in a very big way in a few years is really hard to contend with. There's a lot of emotion there, but I think being able to see it through an archetypal lens really helped me kind of almost see the poetic beauty in it too, the tension between what's emerging, what I've asked for, and what is being asked to be cleared, because my life is changing and the people in my life are changing, and that's okay. Change can come through welcoming or woe, and it's really about how you want to deal with it. And I think being able to use archetypes was such a powerful way for me to acknowledge the changes that are happening without feeling broken, without feeling like I am a jacked up, messed up, and I am the problem, and it's all me, and everyone should just leave because I suck, or I should just go and chase down my old life and cling to it because I'm no good. I think being able to see it through an archetypal lens really helped me work through a lot of that pain and maybe walk away with some more like grace for myself, that it's just life changing and that's okay. It's allowed to change, and I can respond to it in a way that's not so freaked out. Once I made the connections with my archetypes, the metaphor that really arrived for me, and it's still here, I'm still working through it, was really imagining myself in between two doors where one door is closing and another door is opening. Neither yet fully closed and fully open, but I'm standing there in the in between. And it's really up to me to allow that tension to be there and to grieve, to allow, to let go, but not to kill the parts of me. I think the part of me where I was scared was that I would have to kill these parts of me, and that's just not true. I'm allowed to keep them, but maybe they take a backseat. What if I let my founder take the wheel? What if I let my swan take the wheel? What if I let my rebel take the wheel? What could change and be possible and open up in my life if I let them do the driving in these new places in my life where change is happening? I'm going to invite you with one tiny invitation here. The next time you are feeling out of sorts, maybe just take a breath and ask yourself, who is really running the show? And if you are interested in going deeper with this work, you're curious about archetypes, you want to work with them or play with them, I have a companion guide. I'll have the link in the show notes. It's beyourowndayhero.com/store. There will be a companion guide and workbook to deepen into this together. It's going to be very fairly priced so that it's accessible to anyone and everyone that wants to go deeper with this work and see what unfolds in their own experience. It's going to have experiments, reflections, tips from me who's living the work. And I think that lived experience tips are going to be so much more powerful than just these conceptual blips because I've really had to work with it, and it's a lot to work with and experiment with. So I'll share my experiments with you. I'll be excited to hear what happens and emerges in your own experiments and work with archetypes. And until then, be your own day hero.